Hi, my name's Jane and I'm the Cornish Knitter. On this channel I share a little bit about my knitting and crochet journey, something about my life in Cornwall and owning a yarn shop, and also just my thoughts on life in general as we get older and changes occur and things happen and life gets complicated in lots of ways. So this time I'm just going to talk about that weird time in between Christmas and New Year called Twixmas. In my last video I did say it's the time of year I plan a cast on that's just for me, not for the shop. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Cornish Gansey, which is something that I'm going to be doing in 2025, and I hope you will enjoy my progress and my thoughts as we go through the planning of that. And I've also got a little giveaway as well, so keep watching because you might find that a little interesting, and just my reflections back on 2024 and what I might do differently in 2025. So I hope you enjoy this video. At the end I've just popped a little video about, you know, just the things that I've been up to over Twixmas, and yeah, I hope you enjoy it anyway. So let's get started. Probably the first thing I should do is just talk about what I'm wearing. The jumper is a shop jumper. It's from Sea Salt. I couldn't resist it. Love this colour. I like to knit in this colour. I just noticed my glasses are on my head. I'll be looking for those later, running around thinking, where are they? In fact, I've got two pairs of glasses now, and quite often I find myself having completely lost one pair. I have to find the other pair in their box and sort of take them out and use them. So I don't know if I'm alone in that, but yeah, finding it's happening a little bit more often. And I must probably get one of those things that puts glasses around my neck. A little bit like car keys, isn't it, and door keys. So what have I been up to? When I last spoke to you, I talked about, oh no, gosh, that shows you I just get distracted, you know, that's how my mind works. I was talking about what I was wearing. So the jumper is from Sea Salt. The shawl is actually, it's called, in fact I think I've got it on the wrong way around, On the Spice Market by Melanie Berg. It's one that I knitted absolutely years ago. I actually got the kit from Loop of London, and I got a feeling they still do these kits, and I loved the bright colours in it. I have definitely got it on the wrong way around. God, my head's in the wrong space, isn't it? Glasses now. I can't even get myself dressed properly. And I think, thinking back on it, it's probably one of the patterns that really got me back into knitting in the way that I have been. You know, I'd got back into knitting after I learned to knit when I was about 8, knitted into my 20s vociferously, and then had children and had a break from knitting. Mum knitted all the kids' jumpers, so I didn't feel the need. Didn't have the time. I was working, bringing up family, you know. I was also doing a degree and masters at the time through Open University. So I just didn't have the headspace, I suppose, for knitting. And I sort of came back to it when the kids were teenagers, and into their sort of early 20s and much more independent. And I just needed something that was for me. And I started to knit again. And I knitted, you know, intermittently, and sort of began to feel the benefits, but goodness me, everything had changed. I'd gone from knitting, you know, those of you listening are of a similar age to me will remember the lovely vinyl-y plastic grey needles that you used to have, the old measurements, 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s. That's nothing to do with millimeters, by the way. And also, you know, flat patterns that you knitted front and back and then had to mattress stitch together. Horrible job. I bet most of us had projects that probably are still sat somewhere waiting to be seen together. And yeah, it was the thing that used to put me off knitting. Although subsequently I quite enjoyed the sewing part, but in those days, yeah, it was a hassle. But when I came back to knitting, of course, everything had changed. Patterns were like a foreign language. It was written completely differently. We had circular needles, we had different casts on, different ways of binding off, different terminology. It was just like learning a whole new science. And I suppose that's probably what interested me, because I'm a natural learner. I have an affinity with learning. I like to learn new things. So it's probably what attracted me back into the hobby. But I digress a little bit again. But going back to this shawl, it's probably the one thing. I started to visit some of the yarn shops in London when I was working there. And it was the one thing that probably drew me back into knitting in a big way. And this shawl was one of the things that's sort of a big project for me at the time. And I sat and I just enjoyed the colour play. And I think after that was when sort of knitting for me almost exploded, in terms of I really can't imagine a time when I wouldn't have a set of needles in my hand making something. So that's what I've got on today, because I thought the colour, even the wrong way round, I thought the colour really sort of complemented this. It brightens me up because it's midwinter, and it is here in the UK. And I had these little earrings from Studio Lowen, which is a leather maker here. So I thought the pink sort of highlighted those two. So I just like a little colourful display today. So that's what I've got on. So when I last chatted to you, I was talking about, because I knit so much for the shop, quite at Christmas time, I like to actually have a cast on. That's for me alone. It's not a sample for the shop. It's not to promote a wool that we have in the shop necessarily. You know, we have lovely yarns, but there are so many beautiful yarns. And it was just something that I wanted to cast on that was for me alone, that just gave me pleasure. And when I talked last time, I sort of gave you my options. One which was the mosaic bag, which was a Marie Wallin pattern, which was a little colour work, mosaic colour work. Then it was a spot sweater by Anne Wenzel, which is again a colour work, because I've been enjoying the colour work that I've been doing, and I've had the yarn in my stash for ages. So it was like, yep, I can get that out, I can use that. And I also talked about my thoughts about knitting a traditional Cornish Gansey, and I'll come on to that in a moment. So I did do my Christmas cast on. So the Marie Wallin bag happened. So this is how far I got cast on Christmas Eve. This is how far I've got. So this is one side of the bag. I've just got a little bit of half of that pattern to finish, and then you cast off, and then you knit the other side completely the same. It was a kit that I bought direct from Marie Wallin, again, been in my stash for a long time. And then you line it with some fabric. So I think I've either got some really nice quilting cotton, because I think it needs quite a stable fabric, or maybe some Harris tweed might be nice with this as well. So, and then you have you make a little button loop and have a button fastening on the top. And obviously this bit here means that you've got a square bottom. So I do think you need a sewing machine to attach the fabric, and then there's a lot of sort of mattress stitch and hand stitching too. But I've really enjoyed that, because these sections are all pretty quick to do, so and quite repetitive. One thing that surprised me was that it was garter stitch. So it is knit stitch. I don't know if you can see that. So it's knit stitch. So it's a little bit more difficult to see the pattern emerging, or if you've made a mistake with garter stitch as opposed to colour work in stocking stitch. But because it's mosaic, it's pretty easy. If you make a mistake, you can go back. So I've enjoyed that, and that's been a true Twixmas or Christmas cast on for me, something that I've taken great pleasure in doing, and I know I'll finish. And hopefully next time I'll come on, I'll show you the finished thing. And yeah, sort of quite meditative in nature, because I don't really have to think too hard about it. Which brings me on to the second one. So the spot sweater, if you're familiar with the spot sweater by Anna Wenzel, top-down sweater, all over design. I don't think I've got the pattern. Oh, I have. The picture of it. So there's a design there. I've got the yarn, which is the original yarn to do this version here with the orange in it. So I cast on, now bearing in mind I've just said, oh, I've just noticed that I've dropped the stitches, but it doesn't matter because this is coming out after I speak to you. So I cast this on. You can see I did actually cast on, so technically speaking it was a Christmas cast on. But I'd love to hear from anybody that's done this sweater. Immediately you start to read the pattern and it's just, I'm like, this is a bit confusing. I couldn't, with the chart, I couldn't see, you knit the front and you knit the back and then you join onto the arms, knit the body. And I think once you get into the colour work, design and pattern, it will be fine. But it's the way you start it. And she's got 5 videos, I think, online with each row, which immediately sends alarm bells ringing for me. It's like, why should you need to explain how to start your sweater? And it's the first row where you introduce the colour that gets confusing, because the chart is not very clear. And when I read the comments down beside her video, there was an awful lot of people that felt exactly like me. So that sort of was reassuring, because it's like, well, it's not my brain that's addled alone. It's actually, you know, it's the design of the sweater. Why designers have to make it so blooming difficult to get started, I don't know, because it's put me right off doing it. Because the whole point of a Christmas cast on is it's something that I enjoy, I can find relaxing, you know, there's no pressure to it. And I was having to focus and concentrate on these videos. I kept on having to stop and rewind it, thinking, well, that's not looking like the chart does. And in the end, last night, I was just like, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through this? She is bringing out a new spot sweater pattern, which I think she's calling regular. So I'm going to hold off on repurposing the yarn because I love the yarn. The yarn is, I dropped it out. The yarn is these 3. So this is Arwetta, and this is Tilia, and this is Pernilla, and they're all from Falmouth Yarns. So you hold these 2 together, and then this is the contrast. And last night I spent a lovely hour on Ravelry looking at alternatives I could use with the yarn that I've got on the pattern. Thea Coleman had a good one. Oh, I can't remember the name of it. If I can remember the name of it, I'll pop it up underneath. So that is an option, but I am going to wait and just see how the spot sweater, because I love the design. It's just so flipping complicated. It's just like, why do you have to do that? But I'd be really interested. I know lots of people have knitted it and love it, but that first bit is enough to put anybody off. And I'm a really competent knitter, so it's just like, I have to think too hard. I don't need to do that, you know. I don't need to put myself through that, really. So there were going to be 2 Christmas cast-ons, and there were two, technically speaking, there were 2 Christmas cast-ons. But one of them, yeah, is going to sit there until I decide what to do with the yarn, which is a bit of a shame. The other thing I have been doing, I did mention in my previous video, that this book here by Toft, which is The Garden Vegetables, I have been obsessed with making vegetables, and I haven't got them all here, but I just have to show you the peas. These peas come out from their pod, Oh dear, they are so sweet. So yeah, I've been slightly obsessed with making them. The other ones that I've made, the leek, an onion and tomatoes. But the beetroot, look at the beetroot. Beetroot's so cool. Could have done with a bit more stuffing. I was running out and got impatient to finish before I could get some more stuffing. But yeah, so I really love the beetroot. And then the next one I've done is the carrot. Look at those leaves. Aren't they cool? I do love them. So yeah, Kerry, if you're watching from Toft, brilliant, brilliant designs. And if you're into crochet, great. And I've made some as gifts and given them away too. So I really enjoyed that. So the lead up to Christmas, I think since I last spoke to you, my dad had a really bad fall out in the back garden. My dad's in his mid-90s, my mum's in her 90s. So my sister and I get a frantic phone call one afternoon saying, your dad's fallen in the back garden. He went out in his slippers. Tell him, don't go out in the back garden in your slippers. Well, he is a bit deaf, but I was going to say it falls on deaf ears. So anyway, he tripped up some steps, wasn't quick enough to defend himself in terms of put out his hands, which potentially was a good thing because he didn't break any major bones, but he face planted onto some really rough concrete and really messed up his face. I mean, really messed up his face. So it was a little bit like a horror scene when we got there. My sister and her husband got him off to the hospital as quickly as possible. There was blood everywhere. My mum was naturally panicking. She was looking after my dog Bailey, so you know, and yeah, it was just carnage. And the hospital experience, anybody that lives in the UK, and I've worked for the NHS for a number of years, my goodness, it's appalling. My dad sat in accident and emergency from 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and we got him home at 2 in the morning. He wasn't offered a hot drink. He wasn't offered a sandwich, a piece of toast. It took that, in the end, we discharged him because all we were waiting for was discharge papers. And it was just like, he is exhausted. He's in his mid-90s. He's had quite a traumatic day. He had, I think, 20 or 30 stitches in his face. He's broken his nose. You know, he did not need to be sitting there waiting that long. And I had mum at home who was fussing because she was sort of so anxious, and I was trying to keep her calm. I had to go outside and clear up everything because I didn't want them seeing, you know, the debris in the morning from what had happened. But yeah, my mum was frantic. You know, dad had this awful fall. Fortunately, he's, you know, over Christmas, his face, he came out looking like the mummy with bandages all over the place and completely, because he'd broken his nose. This next day he had these huge black eyes and bruising in lots of places, but didn't break anything major, and it could have been an awful lot worse. But it did mean that just in the lead up to Christmas, as well as the normal sort of activity and running a retail business, which is always busier leading up to Christmas, my sister and I were sharing, looking after dad and mum and coping with the sort of aftermath of quite a traumatic event for them. And it just sucked up loads of time. And knitting really was my refuge and therapy. And I'm so glad, and the crochet, to be fair, I was just so glad I had that as a tool in my toolbox to help me cope with what was both worrying but also a really sort of energy sapping time, you know, running, constantly going back for hospital appointments, doctor's appointments, getting mum out shopping, making sure dad got a little bit of exercise, because, you know, at that age you don't want them sitting all the time. You know, sorting out his glasses, which were shattered, all of these things which, you know, you've got competing priorities, and some things have to take priority at that point in life, don't they? And yeah, it just, as I approach the sort of end of 2024, I'm not really a New Year's Eve party, but I never have been, even in my youth. I never liked New Year's Eve. I've always found it a time for reflection and I suppose a reset. Not that I've ever dived into New Year's resolutions as such, you know, never sort of tried to be too ambitious with what I was trying to do. But I always do think of it as a time to pause and reflect and think about what's happened over the last year and what does next year bring. So I'm not going to say morose, but I find I like quiet time over New Year to be able to do that and process that. And I have been sort of thinking about my life and you know, any of us that are getting older, yeah, our children get older, but their problems get bigger, don't they? And they're still your children, so you're still worried about them. And caring for elderly parents you're caring for them and you're worried about them at the same time. And yeah, just trying to do so many things. And I've just sort of, particularly in the last few weeks, months, I've just felt a bit overwhelmed. Just so many, you know, it's affected my ability to sleep, and then you feel tired and you've got constant sort of emails and messages. And I just don't think, I'm on a digital platform talking to you, but I just don't think sometimes digital things help either, because you're so accessible, aren't you? You know, WhatsApp and constant messages coming up. And I think part of it is my personality type as well. Even in the days, and I'm going back a few years, when we had Blackberries, and anybody that remembers those, they were a form of device which was a bit like a smartphone, but and you had your emails. But if you remember, anybody that had a Blackberry would remember that it had a green flashing light on the top. And if a new email came in or a message, that flashing light would turn red. And with my personality type, I could never leave that flashing red. I had to look at it. And then I had to act. If I've looked at it, I have to action it. So it's just me. I just know that I need to, you know, I can't leave things and not respond. So, and I've found in the last few months that I felt just a bit overwhelmed with it all, with the constant, intrusion, I suppose, of lots of things and trying to juggle lots of things. So it's just making me take a little bit of a pause and think, right, so that's how I was feeling at 20. It's affecting, you know, that's got to be affecting my health. It's got to be affecting my well-being. You know, I've suffered with depression in the past and had a period of burnout, and I just don't ever want to go back to that space again. So just on those reflections, and I just thought about how I could do more to sort of calm life down, that sort of slow living, intentional living, mindful living, and just carve out a little bit of time for me, because I was also finding in the last few months, you know, I was knitting for the shop, but it wasn't necessarily bringing me an awful lot of pleasure, because it felt like, you know, they say be careful about making your hobby your business, but it did feel like I was on a production line to get things out, get things done, and it started to strip the joy out of some of it too. And I'm quite a creative person, so I just want to be able to explore a little bit of other creative activities. I really would love to learn to throw clay, you know, do some pottery courses. So I have booked some for this year coming. And I suppose I heard somebody call it intentions rather than, I think it was Jane on Snapdragon Life, is it called, a YouTuber which I really love. She's based in the Highlands in Scotland, and she's a really creative person, but she talked about making intentions, and I think that's a really good approach going into next year. So I'm not going to beat myself up if I don't do them. It's actually more intentional living. So my plan is to take a little bit more time out for me in the next few months going forward, to do some of the things that I love to do whilst balancing all of those things that I've got to do, like obviously run the business and look after my parents and be there for my children, my husband, and anybody else that I really care about. My friends are really important to me, and I like to think I'm a good and loyal friend. So, you know, if they need me, I'm always there for them. In the same way that I know my friends and my family have always been there for me. My good friends, there aren't, you know, I don't have a massive circle of friends, but the ones I do have, I know are really there for me, and I can talk to them about anything, and they will step in when I need to step back. And I have, you know, my newsletter that's going out for the shop over the next couple of days. I talk about this in a little bit more detail. You know, I've had some fantastic support, you know, in the last few months, having had a bereavement, you know, family things going on, as well as sort of the financial pressures and stress of running a retail business here in the UK at the moment. I've been really grateful to the people, and they know who they are, the people that have been there for me, and friends and family are so important, not just to me, I think to all of us. So yes, so that's my intention for 2025, to be more intentional and embrace slow living a little bit more. And I do tend to watch YouTubers that are sort of talking about slow living, and I find it actually quite restful and calming. So the fact that I'm noticing that has meant that I need to actually adjust my life slightly to make sure that I do that. And I'd love to hear from you about what your intentions are for 2025, and whether, you know, slow living is something, you know, what are your suggestions? What do you do to help balance the chaos that can be life at sometimes when you've got all these competing demands on you? So that's that. So I talked in my last video about the Cornish Gansey. With a strong Cornish heritage, such as I have, and my affinity to the sea, my ancestors grew up in Cornwall. You know, my mum's family name was Timmins, which is the Cornish names, and going back it was Dragenza, so very Cornish by heritage. And I've always wanted to explore that more, learn a little bit more about my heritage, and particularly why that affinity to the sea is so strong. I'm a Cancerian, which probably also adds to my affinity to the sea. And it's the place that actually soothes me and makes, you know, being by the sea, being by water is something that really soothes me. So it's sort of something that I've always wanted to do, was knit a traditional Cornish Gansey. And I've been sort of doing some research, and with the help of somebody called Jenny, we're going to producing a few blogs on the website about the heritage of the Cornish Gansey and the Gansey, and then talking more about the pattern, the construction, and then going into actually sort of creating a Cornish Gansey in 2025 that's unique to me. So I'd love to take you along with me, and I hope you will join me in some of the videos I'm going to sort of create over the early part of 2025, when I talk a little bit more about the heritage of the Cornish Gansey and how it's sort of associated with my family here in Falmouth in Cornwall. So many people talk about sort of Cornishness, but, you know, I can do it authentically and genuinely, because Cornwall is part of my heritage, and, you know, I grew up here and have always lived here as an adult as well, even though I worked away, and still have a very strong, my family still has a very strong affinity with the sea. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Cornish Gansey and then go into more about the wools that you use, why you use them, how you construct them, how you would design them. Over on the flock, which is obviously the Cornish Knitters flock, we're going to be doing an awful lot more on it, and hopefully we're going to have a knit along for people who are on the flock who want to have a go at designing their own Gansey, and we'll go into more detail on there. So if you are interested in sort of really doing a deep dive and maybe designing your own, please do take a look at the flock and see if it's for you, if it's, you know, it's a wonderful online community. We've had people join from Canada and Australia and the UK over the Christmas period, and it's just so wonderful to have such a global community of really supportive, nurturing people. And I think what I'm hearing from people on the flock, it's not just that sharing of their passion for yarn and knitting and crochet. Actually, what people are getting from it is it's the way it makes them feel. It makes them feel that they've got friends all over the world who can, yes, talk about their knitting, but we talk about so much more and share life's challenges and support each other through them. And I've certainly benefited from that in the last few months in particular, and for me, I get as much out of it as any member of that community. So if you are interested in doing a much deeper dive into the Cornish Gansey, do have a look at the flock, but I will be sharing my journey here with you. So what yarn am I going to use? So the yarn I showed last time a sort of, it was a pale denim sort of blue, but I opted away from that. When I held it to my face, I didn't really feel, if I'm going to invest all that time and effort into knitting this sweater that I've had ambitions to knit for so long, I wanted to do something that I was going to really enjoy. And traditionally they were navy, but my eyes, I didn't want to add that pressure, knitting a really dark navy onto my eyes through the winter. So I opted for this colour here. So it's sort of tonally not dissimilar to this. So I've opted for this sort of green. This is a blacker yarn. So it's their Romney, Guernsey. So it's a worsted spun, obviously 5-ply. And it's bright olive. So that's the band. So yeah, I'm going to knit it in that colour. I think it's a slightly brighter colour without it being, it's not even blue, is it? So, however, we've also got all of these colours here that you can knit in. I don't know if people can see that really clearly. So here and here. This is Frangipani yarn. This is a traditional navy that it was knitted in. So Frangipani, this is, I think it's Falmouth blue. Can't see the colour on it, but I'm pretty certain this is the Falmouth blue, which is a really dark navy. And I particularly like this one. I was very tempted with this one. This is the Helford blue colour. So these are 500-gram cones. They also do 250 grams. We will be selling them in the new year. We will be popping them, all the colours, on our website. You'll be able to buy them direct from us. I was talking to Caroline, who's part of the Frangipani company. I think they'd prefer if they sold through sort of people like ourselves or other retailers that sell Frangipani yarn. Also wanted to show you this colour because, again, it's so similar to this. The mustard, I think, is really lovely. I think this is called, what colour is this called? Cornish gold. So we will have, or we will be able to supply all of the colours here in 500 grams and 250 grams in a 500-gram cone. Ooh, what's the meterage? It's actually on the card. Is it on the card? No, it's not. Where is that? I thought it was on here somewhere. From memory, when I looked at this, I think it is about 1,000 meters of yarn on a 500 gram. I will, when I do the videos properly and talk about the yarns and everything, I will make sure that I know the meterage, because I thought to myself I would need probably 750 grams of the yarn to actually make mine, if I was using it. So yeah, I thought it was on there, but it's not. Pretty certain it's about just over 1,000 per 500 meters per 500 grams. Which brings me to my giveaway. So we have reached 6,000 subscribers. How did that happen? Who knew? So my giveaway is a sweater's quantity of Frangipani yarn for you to knit your own Gansey or do whatever you want with it. And to enter, I'd love you to comment below and tell me what you love about Cornwall and what you love about the sea. So Cornwall and the sea. So you need to subscribe to the channel. You need to comment on there. And by the next video, when I do my first video on the Cornish Gansey, I will announce who the winner is. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Then you can let me know what colour you'd like and how much, what size you are, so we can work out the meterage for you. And so it doesn't matter if you're a size 8 or a size 30. The giveaway is the yarn to knit you a sweater. So I hope you like that giveaway. I hope you're going to join me on my Cornish, a step back into my heritage, really, that Cornish Gansey knitting journey over 2025. And I will talk a little bit about my intentions around slow living as well. So all that's left of me is to wish you a very, very happy and peaceful New Year and 2025. I hope that you are looking forward to the next year and thinking about what you can do to enrich your life and embrace your own sort of self-care, so you improve your health and well-being too. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you more in 2025. I've popped a little video up, as I said, about just some of the things I've been doing. Bailey the dog features quite a bit over the last few days. You'll see he's very needy, so he's always sort of interrupting my knitting. But I can't wait to speak to you again. So do remember to like and subscribe. And yeah, let's catch up soon.
Here I shall die.